Welcome to today's daily devotional. Today I want to talk about love and the Christian role of love in our faith. So we obviously know that love is something that we are called to as believers. God, we are told, is love. Jesus Christ gave his life on the cross as an act of love. For God so loved the world that he sent his son. Our chief end as believers is to be like God. And then that requires becoming more and more loving in a very profound way. And you see this, for example, in 1 Corinthians, when Paul is talking about the gifts of the Spirit, he stops himself in chapter 13 and he goes on a tangent about love. So I wanted to look at love in a couple of different passages, the first of which is the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 6:43 through 48. Jesus says, "Ye have heard it hath been said, Thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good unto them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you, and persecute you, that you may be children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the publicans do the same? And if ye salute your brethren only, what do ye more than others? Do not even the publicans do so? But ye therefore be perfect, even as your Father who is in heaven is perfect." Jesus is calling us to love our enemies, to bless those who persecute us. And in Romans, which is the passage we're going to look at in a second here, bless and curse not. To pray for them that despitefully use you. This doesn't mean pray for their destruction. Pray for them. Don't just pray in a way that you're self-righteous and you're all right. Pray for them, for their salvation, and also for yourself. Pray that you, in some ways, would be able to love them. Pray that they would be able to see the kingdom. And a lot of times when someone is not killing us, as in the first century or second century context, but is despitefully using us, which is a good phrase, comes off the tongue rather easily. When someone is despitefully using us, our urge is that they should have a downfall, that they should be despitefully used themselves. But instead, we are called to pray for them. We are called to love them. Next passage I want to look at is in Romans 12, a passage I've used before in these devotionals, starting in verse 17. Romans 12:17. "Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as it lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good." We are told that we ought to love our enemies, that we ought not to exact our wrath on them, but give place unto God's judgment and God's wrath. Our enemies are not our enemies are not our own, in the sense that we are not to deal with them in a judgmental way. We are not to serve them out justice, but we are called to love them. We are called to love our enemies up, including to those who are our political enemies, our enemies in our family, our enemies who are our friends, our enemies socially. And a lot of times when we encounter an enemy, what we want to do is to act in anger, to get defensive, and to lash out, or to write off. Say, that person's just stupid. That person is just, not worth my time. And, there are cases where we ought to back down. But to put ourselves in the place of God, in this place of arrogance and pride and self-righteousness, thinking that we are better off than those people across the political aisle, or that family member who we really don't get along with, or the person in the community who is saying slanderous things about us. For us to want to extend a hand of love to them is not something that is possible in our own might. And really, we have the choice between acting out of fear and acting out of love, because all of these negative responses that we have to people comes out of fear. It's like we're were a dog backed in a corner. And if you back a dog in a corner that doesn't want to be backed into, what's the dog going to do? It's going to bite you. And that's what we do all the time when we act self-righteously and arrogantly in an angered manner, trying to exact our wrath and our judgment and our righteousness onto our brother. And so the last passage I want us to look at is another popular passage. It's in the 1 John, starting in verse 18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear has torment. He that fears is not made perfect in love. We love him because he first loved us. If a man say, I love God, and hateth his brother, he is a liar. For he that hateth not his brother whom he hath seen, how can he love God whom he hath not? Hateth his brother whom he has seen, how can he love God whom he has not seen? And this commandment we have from him, that he who loveth God, love his brother also. We are called as believers to not act out of fear, to not act out of sinfulness, to not act out of our own righteousness, but to act out of love. And this is the foolishness of the cross that Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians 1. This is the foolishness that God would become man and allow himself to be killed by his enemies. He would allow himself to be humiliated on a cross, beaten to death, crucified to death by his enemies. And we ought to do the same thing. We ought to take up our own crosses and bless them that persecute us. Bless and curse not. That we ought to prayerfully live this life where we are going to encounter troubles, but through the grace of God and through his love flowing out of us, we love because he first loved us, as we just read. We will be able to love our brother, and then we will be able to show that we love God. Because if we cannot love our brother who we have seen, we cannot love God who we have not seen. So that's my prayer for all of us, that we would be able to love our enemy, love those who persecute us, and not act out of fear, but act out of love and the God who does love us. Thank you for watching.